Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Please recognize Representative West Kevin to present the CCR to SB 3.
Clerk will read.
CCR to Senate Bill 3 by call of the House and treat of the Senate, and act relating to the University Hospitals Authority.
Representative West Kevin, you are recognized to explain the CCR.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, Senate Bill 3 XX will appropriate dollars to OU Medical, and it does have some limitations on the funds that they have. I open to questions and move for adoption.
Representative Fugate, are you in the queue for a question? For what purpose, Representative Fugate?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to divide the question by section to consider Section 1 separately from all other provisions of the bill. Because of the contentious nature of that section, the members deserve the right to vote on that separately.
Thank you for your motion. You cannot divide a conference committee report. We're not voting on amendment. We're voting on adoption of the report only. Representative Blansett, you are recognized for a question on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative, could you please enlighten us as to the restrictions that you are placing on the use of this money?
Thank you for that question. Yes, I can. To be perfectly clear, it is not a restriction on the monies that we are appropriating. It is a restriction on any of the monies that they have. And it says that they will receive these funds provided no monies shall be budgeted or expended by the authority for the benefit of any facility owned by the University Hospitals Authority or University Hospitals Trust to perform gender reassignment medical treatments as defined in this section on children under 18 years of age.
Representative Blansett, you are recognized for a follow-up.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative, can you give us some further information about why you think this line of restriction is, one, necessary, and two, appropriate for putting restrictions on the use of this ARPA money?
Well, once again, it is not a restriction on the use of the ARPA money. The use of the ARPA money is clearly defined, and there's 4 different pieces that appropriate dollars. The reason that this is so important is because we've been made aware that OU Children's Hospital has been performing some of these procedures, and it is the feeling of a lot of Oklahomans that taxpayer dollars should not be being used to fund those procedures for gender reassignment.
Representative Blansett, I will give you one more. I'm going to ask you to get back in the queue, please.
I appreciate it, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much. Can you explain exactly how taxpayer dollars are used for these procedures? And I'm asking for edification because I'm assuming that oftentimes these are private pay clients. They may have insurance that they pay for, but if they write a check for, co-pays or whatever, that's not really utilizing state resources. So I'm really unclear as to why there is a perception or an assumption that taxpayer dollars are being used for these procedures. Do we have any statistics or dollar amounts or an analysis of the degree of taxpayer use of money for this kind of thing, and particularly because we are attaching this to such an important, groundbreaking piece of legislation? So I'm assuming it must be significant.
I appreciate that. I do not have that data, but what I do know is that when you're receiving taxpayer dollars, and if you are getting private donations or whatever, all of those monies get intermingled. So it's the transference of money. And I know several don't agree with that, but that is actual true.
Representative Bennett, you are recognized for a question on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative, I have a series of questions, but not on the same topic. You and I know that we disagree on the heart of the subject, but one thing I think we could just, agree on is that process matters. Can you help us understand how legislation like this, that has such a profound impact, made it to the floor without any other action by duly elected members of the legislature?
I don't think I really followed your question there. I want to be able to give you an answer, but if you could clarify.
You're recognized for a clarification of your question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sure. So typically in the legislature, and I know that this is an extraordinary session, but usually on policy bills, and we're setting a policy here, it has to, the bill has to be drafted, it has to pass through committee, it has to pass off of the floor. Here we have legislation that we are seeing on the floor for the first time. So can you help me feel better about the fact that we are we're shortcutting the process to make this happen?
Well, the process that we have to get these bills through, which in all fairness, there is policy attached to all of the bills that we've been running, because we're giving parameters how they're going to do what they're going to do with this money. So this one just happens to be a lot more controversial. I totally get that. But the process that this bill went through is the exact same process that every other bill that we've heard today has gone through.
Representative Bennett, you are recognized for a follow-up.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can you agree, though, that nowhere in this process, including early in the process when we as a legislature agreed to claw back the responsibilities for doling out ARPA dollars from the governor, in what I consider to be a real moment of bipartisanship, this was never discussed, making what we're doing right now pretty disingenuous. Would you agree?
I would agree that wasn't discussed. I would disagree that it's disingenuous, but this came up when this particular project came up, and this was the solution that was determined to be the way to proceed.
Members, as you can imagine, there is a very lengthy queue. We're going to go to one question and one follow-up. The queue will remain open, so after your follow-up, just get back in the queue, please. Representative Virgin, you are recognized for a question on the CCR.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative, I think you'd agree that we're talking about medical care for minors that their parents sign off on. And I know that one of those procedures that would be banned under this legislation would be surgeries. And so it's my understanding, would you believe that if a 16-year-old girl wants to go in and get a breast augmentation with her parents' consent, that is allowed? Why do you think that should be legal, but this surgery shouldn't be legal?
Well, I would say that there are many things that minors are prohibited from doing, even with parental consent. And for something like this, that is a life-altering procedure, whether it's the puberty blockers, the hormone therapy, or the surgeries, that should not be performed on minors, regardless.
Representative Virgin, you recognize for a follow-up.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. But can you differentiate for me those two procedures? Why is breast augmentation okay, but the opposite isn't okay? Why do you think one's not okay and one is?
Well, like I said, sometimes There are a lot of procedures, you know, that there might need to be something done for another medical reason. Very few that I'm aware of fall into the elective category, but really it's the overall process and the fact that this is being done at a taxpayer-funded facility.
Let's get back in the queue. We're on one question, one follow-up. Representative Goodwin, you are recognized for a question on the CCR.
Thank you. I want to ask, do you honestly believe that a person that would seek gender reassignment is excluded from paying taxes?
No, they do pay taxes.
Representative Goodwin, you're recognized for one follow-up.
Then, following your logic, being that taxes are being paid, you opened up with saying that Oklahomans don't think their taxpayer dollars should be used as such. So then do you see contradiction in what you just said?
No, I do not, because we are addressing people under the age of 18 in this, and very few people under the age of 18 are actually paying taxes.
Representative Dollins, you are recognized for a question on the CCR.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative, to clarify, there's been months and months of hard work in these working groups, and as it was mentioned, not once did this come up. If this is such an important issue, why was it just brought up a week ago?
Like I said earlier, whenever this particular project was brought up, several members expressed concern because of the practices that were going on at OU Children's, and this was decided to be the best way to address those concerns.
Representative Dollins, you're recognized for one follow-up.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And to clarify again, these practices and procedures, can you explain what they are and how they break down percentage-wise?
I do not know the percentage. I know that a meeting that I attended with some physicians from this program, that they said that they are doing what they refer to as above-the-waist surgeries. They are doing the puberty blockers, and they have been doing the hormone therapies. And so, you know, it's undeniable that it is happening here at that facility. So that's why it was determined that we needed to take action on this.
Representative Gann, you are recognized for one question on the CCR.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In light of that meeting that we attended with the OU officials, do you recall the one official who said that he really didn't agree with a lot of what was going on with this program? Do you recall that statement?
I do recall that.
Representative Gann, you're recognized for one follow-up.
So what assurance do you have from OU that they won't farm out these procedures after this money is restricted?
I appreciate that question, and you know, there are some things that this specific language does not address, and that is one of them. What I am hopeful for, conversations that I've had, I know you've been involved in some of those, is that we do this, and that will end this practice being performed on children at probably 90% in the state, and then either in another special session, I know that there's been some talk about that, an executive order, or in regular session, we can get the statewide ban.
Representative Turner, you are recognized for a question on the CCR.
Thank you. I really love it when you say the quiet part out loud. So I just want to ask for clarification. If this bill doesn't pass today, is the 39.4, is that what's at risk, or is it the full 108.5?
If this bill does not pass, then the full $108.5 million would be at risk.
Representative Turner, you're recognized for one follow-up.
Thank you. So are you saying that you're willing to let $108.5 million of health care funding go to wayside because you don't want trans youth to be able to get best practice medical care?
I'm saying that I believe that this body will agree that we need to protect children, and we'll go ahead and pass this, and we will protect children and provide these funds.
Representative Munson, you're recognized for one question on the CCR.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative, you mentioned that you had talked to some physicians who work in adolescent medicine, and so surely you heard what I heard, that if we start picking apart and choosing and deciding what type of health care we're going to provide for Oklahomans, that the pediatric residency program is at risk. Did they let you know about that?
That part was not mentioned, but what we are putting a prohibition on will not affect any of the other services that OU Children's provides. It is very specific to the gender reassignment procedures.
Representative Munson, you're recognized for a follow-up.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I know it feels good to think that, but it's not true, because at the OU Health Clinic, there's adolescent medicine. Within there's 3 programs or 3 types of care.
Representative Munson, okay. It's not time for debate. You will get time for debate, and you could do it then. Please ask a question. You'll have plenty of time to debate the bill, and you could do it then. You're recognized for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is a fact that our residency program would face consequences, and they would be cited by their accreditation association. Are you okay with that? I would assume that type of consequence would bother all of us, that we would put our pediatric residency program, training future doctors for our constituents, we're putting that program at risk, and you're okay with that?
I don't believe that we would be putting that at risk with this.
Representative Provenzano, you are recognized for a question on the CCR.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative, are the children that we are addressing in this bill, are they all wards of the state? No. No, there are all children from all walks of life that are addressed in this.
Representative Provenzano, you are recognized for one follow-up on the CCR.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Then why are we inserting government in between the parent and the provider? Why are we not doing that? What right do we have?
Please suspend. The chair will remind that there'll be no outbursts in the gallery. That is a house rule. We were glad that you're here to watch, but you're here to spectate, not to cheer. Thank you for being here. You are recognized to continue your question. Representative Provenzano.
Thank you. It would seem to me that the parents' rights organizations would have a major problem with this. Wouldn't you agree?
I would vehemently disagree. There are many things that the state prohibits children from doing, even with parental consent, and this should absolutely be one of those.
Representative Blancett, you are recognized for a question on the CCR.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So I just want to be clear. My question is, and this is further to Representative Provenzano's question just now, and I'm just asking if this is correct, you do believe that parent authority with regard to medical care for their own children should be the subject of government intervention and control. Is that correct?
That is not what I said. Medical care, Yes. These kind of procedures that we don't even have full data on, no.
President Blanksett, you're recognized for one follow-up on the CCR.
It's my understanding that according to the American Academy of Pediatrics, which I would believe would represent a medical authority, does view this as medical care. Would you believe that the American Academy of Pediatrics knows more about what is medical care and what is not medical care compared to you?
Compared to me, probably. But would you believe that the that same exact organization says that they support gender-affirming and developmentally appropriate health care? We are talking about minors who do not have a full understanding, they're not fully developed, and that's what we're addressing with this bill.
Representative Humphrey, you are recognized for one question on the CCR.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, or Mr. Speaker. Just for the people of District 19, I'm a little bit slower, so I want to make sure that we all understand this, because I think people watching may be lost. So just so I'm clear on it, we're talking about giving OU $108 million so that they can use that for medical purposes. And what we're saying is that if you're going to take our $108 million, we would like you not to mutilate children. Is that what we're saying?
You put that very well. I would absolutely agree.
Representative Humphrey, I'll give you one more follow-up and ask you to get back in the queue, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So do you believe, or would you agree, that if we give schools, state-run hospitals, and other state-run facilities their income, that we shouldn't have the tail wagging the dog? We should be able to dictate what that money is spent for. Would you agree?
I would agree.
Representative Bennett, you are recognized for one question on the CCR.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's funny, he called it our money. I thought it was the taxpayer money, but I digress. Representative, I'm concerned you don't understand what this clinic does. So legitimate question. Are you fully aware of the services, multiple, that this clinic provides that we are going to effectively end with this legislation?
I am aware of the services that they provide, and they will still be able to provide those services. What they won't be able to do is the puberty blockers, hormone therapies, and the reconstructive surgeries.
Representative Bennett, you're recognized for follow-up.
Thanks. Well, so then I assume, and correct me if I'm wrong, I assume then that just like the decisions made at the clinic that are made with a mental health provider, a medical doctor, the parent, and the child, that all of those entities were consulted in the drafting of this legislation. Am I right?
I did not write this bill, so I could not answer that.
Representative West Rick, you're recognized for one question on the CCR.
Thanks, Mr. Speaker. When you get old like me, I have a hard time hearing. Representative, does the legislature have authority over private funds and private pay that's given to the Roy G. Bill program? Does the legislature have the authority to stop that spending?
No, I don't think that they would have the direct authority, but we do have indirect authority, kind of like one of the answers that I gave earlier. When we do give them money and they get money from other resources, that all mixes in together. So, in a roundabout way, yes, but.
Representative West Rick, you're recognized for follow-up.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. But in the bill that we're talking about, nowhere in the bill does it address private funds from corporations, from individuals, and the money that patients are paid for all these services. There's nothing in the bill that says that money can't be used to continue the Roy G. Bill program. Would you agree with that?
I would agree that those exact words are not in there, but I would direct you to, it says no monies. That means any money that they have in their possession cannot be expended by the authority for these purposes.
Leader Virgin, you're recognized for a question on the CCR.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative, I know you mentioned that you spoke with some of the folks who work at the clinic, the physicians. Did you have any conversations with people, families, and their children who have actually accessed the services offered at this clinic?
I have not had any direct communication since this bill has come out.
Leader Virgin, you're recognized for one follow-up.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So you're saying that you are ending the medical care that these people are currently receiving, and you didn't even speak to them before you decided to present this bill?
I have not had those conversations, but even by the admission of the doctors that we spoke to, 2 of the 5 that received the surgeries have expressed regret since that. So that's nearly 50% right there.
Let's get you back in the queue. Representative Goodwin, you are recognized for one question on the CCR.
So are you saying that you had a conversation about medical care? So was that a violation of HIPAA law?
No, because we didn't talk about specific patients. It was all general information.
Representative Goodwin, you're recognized for one follow-up.
So you did say that you had statistics that 50% of the folks that have received some kind of care. It's your understanding from your talking to 2 doctors that you had some data that represents 50% of some 4 million Oklahomans?
I did not say that extrapolated out to the 4 million Oklahomans, and I said it was nearly 50% because they had done 5 and 2 have expressed regret, according to them.
Representative Dollins, you are recognized for a question on the CCR.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative, would you agree that you and the members in this chamber who crafted this legislation know better than parents and doctors across the state?
I would say on this specific issue that it's much better and safer to tap the brakes rather than to move forward with life-altering procedures, and that's what we're trying to address.
Representative Dollins, you're recognized for follow-up.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And to tap the brakes, could you explain the process if a parent of a youth trans were to seek medical help? What would that process look like? Do they go straight from the entrance to the operating room, or is there a series of remedies that are taken before other measures? Can you explain that whole process to me?
I would assume, and it's been explained to me, that there is a process. It does not go straight from one to the operating room.
Representative Gann, you are recognized for a question on the CCR.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative, we agreed that what we heard in the meeting with the OU official who said that he didn't agree with what was going on within this program. It seems to me that that's kind of an admission that there's something wrong going on here. Would you agree?
I would agree.
Representative Gann, you're recognized for one follow-up question on the CCR.
Based upon that testimony and based upon what we know and what we don't know, and in light of what's going on nationally with Vanderbilt, with the recent Florida and Texas, would you be willing, or would you consider laying the bill over and call for an investigation by the Attorney General on exactly what's going on at OU?
I would. It's not really my bill to lay over, but I would like to see this go forward. But I will absolutely support you in efforts to do an investigation, whether it's legislative or Attorney General or a combination.
Representative Fugate, you're recognized for a question on the CCR.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative West, in 2021, the Arkansas legislature passed a prohibition on gender-affirming care, and it was their Republican governor who vetoed that bill, but the legislature then overrode it. So it went to court, and the lower court put an injunction on the enforcement of the bill because it violated the Equal Protection Clause. That went to the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals, which upheld the enjoyment. And so the question I have for you is, how long do you think, I mean, the reality is this is going to wind up with a lawsuit. So how long will this lawsuit delay the building of this critical infrastructure?
Well, based on the response that we've seen from OU Medical, I do not think that this will go into a lawsuit with this. And it is absolutely, as has been pointed out earlier, within our purview to tell entities that we give money to what we want done within those programs.
Representative Fugate, you're recognized for one follow-up.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I think I would add to that, though, that that's within the rules of the Constitution of the United States, which is where we get the equal enforcement and protection of the law. The other question I have deals with the statement earlier that I think I heard, which is that those are under the age of 18 are not fully developed and they're unprepared for life-altering procedures. And I just have to ask, is this the same group of minors that we now force to have children and who just 2 years ago this body said could get married no matter what age they are?
Some of them might fall into that category.
Representative Turner, you are recognized for one question on the CCR.
Thank you. I remember having a conversation with you about about creating another gender marker for folks, and the thing that stopped was that I hadn't done an interim study, and that was the explanation. So I'm wondering if there was an interim study specifically about this bill that you ran.
I have not run an interim study on this. I did work on helping to get this language, but I have not done an interim study myself, no.
Representative Turner, you're recognized for a follow-up.
And I just want to, if you could just walk me through one more time, so without doing the proper research for a bill like this and running it, can you walk me through one more time why you feel compelled that you are the best to speak on this or run legislation like this about something that doesn't affect you?
Well, kind of like what's been brought up before, what we've been hearing nationally, we've heard a whole bunch of stuff from Vanderbilt. It seems like almost every day there are more people coming forward who are expressing regret for having done these type of surgeries, especially when they were young. And we have multiple things that we prohibit minors from doing, even with parental consent. So I believe that this falls directly in line with that, and that's why I was willing to present this bill.
Representative Munson, you are recognized for a question on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So I want to stay on the topic of what can happen to the pediatric residency program, because I think it's important to really understand how that's going to impact health care for our constituents. So the Accreditation Council for Graduate Medical Education, that's the accrediting association, says they mandate that a minimum amount of clinical time must be spent on inpatient care with a nearly equivalent minimum amount of time mandated for subspecialty exposure, which is what adolescent medicine is. So would you agree, now that I've shared some facts with you, that there is a chance that we could put our pediatric residency program at risk?
No.
Representative Munson, you are recognized for a follow-up.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And earlier in one of your answers to me, you said, I do not believe that adolescent medicine or that care for those patients will end. But it will, because when you believe that if we are dictating what care doctors can and cannot provide for their patients, if we eliminate that care, they do not have a job. So they cannot practice medicine in their subspecialty. So wouldn't you agree that it would actually end any and all programs or services or health care that is provided through adolescent medicine?
I would not agree.
Members, we have a very lengthy queue. I'm going to close it at this time. We'll get through all these questions, then we will divvy up the time for debate. Representative Blancett, you are recognized for a question on the CCR.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative, I'd asked you earlier about your information about the numbers of procedures or the numbers of recipients of this care so that we can better understand the degree of the issue that you're proposing here and comparing that to the number of dollars and care that we're proposing in the ARPA bill. You just, and you said you didn't know, but just a minute ago you said that you were aware of 5 operations. So is that the totality of the number of operative procedures that have been administered by this program at OU in totality over what period of time?
No, and the way I understood your first question was overall how many numbers were going through this program, which I do not know. I know that what was expressed to us was 5 above-the-waist surgeries in the last year.
Representative Blancett, you're recognized for one follow-up.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And while I will agree that I think we all care deeply about the care of children in Oklahoma, I guess I'm curious as to your rationale for targeting this particular element of care, which has been identified by medical professionals across the world as appropriate in specific needs. Why you would hold up or hold hostage, and I use those words specifically, why you would hold hostage funds that would address life-saving surgical research and procedures for cancer care and mental health care. Why would you do that?
Well, first off, I would disagree that the way you make it sound is like every medical professional in the entire world agrees that this is best practice, and there are many studies that show that it absolutely is not, and that these are not recommended, especially for minors. But beyond that, it's because we know that we do need these other facilities, and this was an opportunity, and based on the response that we've seen from OU, they seem to be agreeing with us that they're going to end this program and continue to provide care for the citizens of Oklahoma.
Representative Humphrey, you are recognized for a question on the CCR.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative, if you have a person who's anorexic that is starving to, themselves to death because they think they're fat, you wouldn't take away food from them because that's a mental health issue. We know that there are men and women, that's just a fact. We know that most medical experts agree that gender dysphoria is what causes these issues and that that's a mental health issue as well. Would you not agree?
I would agree.
Representative Humphrey, you're recognized for one follow-up question on the CCR.
I've heard people asking you questions that you're not qualified, like any of us are qualified. There may be a few doctors that might have a little more to speak, some health care, but like any of us are qualified. So my question is, you represent a district who elected you to come up here, that you hear from your constituents. Would you believe that my constituents have overwhelmingly told me to, until OU stop mutilating children, or we don't give you the money? Would you be surprised that that's what I've heard from my district, and that's who we represent, each one of us?
That would not surprise me.
Representative Provenzano, you are recognized for a question on the CCR.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would definitely caution every one of us not to diagnose mental health disorders without the degree to back it up. That's out of order.
Do you have a question?
Yep, getting there. Representative. So,
Representative Provenzano.
I'm getting there. Got it.
Go ahead and ask your question.
Thank you. So this is surgeries as well as medication. Is there any other treatment that you wish to ban?
Those are the ones that are doing irreparable harm to our children. You insert hormone therapies, you are interrupting the natural development. Same with puberty blockers. And obviously surgeries are very extreme.
Representative Provenzano, you're recognized for a follow-up.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative, many, if not all of the medications that are used to this effect also help with high blood pressure, help with depression. How are we going to ensure that people who use these medications for those purposes are not denied that access to care because of fear of the way this bill has been written and what's coming for them? Because this is happening already across the nation with our misinterpretation of the Overturner Roe. How are we going to ensure that people who need these to survive are not denied them?
I believe that will be very well documented, and I would venture to say that very few of those medications are being prescribed to 11, 12, 13-year-olds. I'm not saying that it doesn't happen, but also things like the drugs for chemical castration, that's for one specific purpose. So I think it'll be pretty obvious.
Representative West Rick, can you hear me? You're recognized for one question on the CCR.
One question? What you say? Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate it. Representative, a lot of what's done in the Roy G. Bill program is to advise and send patients to other states where they can get the procedures that they want. Even though the procedures won't be performed at this Roy G. Bibb clinic, do you not see that that is the same thing as doing a procedure when they are sending children to other states to have those procedures done?
I do absolutely see where you're coming from on that, but I would also say that would be the one thing that is going to be the most difficult to try to police, for lack of a better term. And I would venture to say that that's one of the reasons that aspect of it did not wind up in this particular bill. But that also tells us that we need to keep looking into this issue and see if we can get some of those things addressed.
Representative Nichols, you are recognized for a question on the CCR.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll start with just saying I think it's it is funny, if not sad, to me to hear like, oh, the constituents of my district care about this so much. I would venture to guess that the constituents in House District 19 and a lot of the other districts across the state, biggest concern with OU right now is probably the fact that you'd be Kansas State, not this. It'd be my guess. But you, in the question earlier, said that you hadn't talked to any of the folks who are most impacted by this. And so I will admit I have not either. But I do have some information right here that tells me that 85% of trans youth experience negative impact on their mental health after the introduction of anti-trans legislation, and that cost of the Trevor Project, which is a suicide prevention hotline for the LGBTQ plus youth community, increased by 150% after Texas passed their anti-trans legislation. So my question to you is, knowing the impact that your bill is going to have on young people in this state, what is your message to them with passage? Those who are thinking about suicide. These are kids who maybe even their parents have had an evolution to accept who they are. But now their state government is telling them, we don't accept you. What do you say to those kids?
Well, first off, I'm saying it's not a matter of not accepting them. We are saying, and I've said it many times, there's still a lot of care that is available. I would add that Sweden, who has been a country that has probably been on the leading edge of this for much longer than most other countries, but they do one thing that most other countries don't. They actually collect data and don't twist it in any way, shape, or form. And according to the data out of Sweden, people, especially youth, who receive these type of procedures are 19 times more likely to commit suicide than those who do not.
Representative Nichols, you recognized for one follow-up.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, I don't know the data from Sweden. There are a lot of things about Sweden and other places I wish we were more like. I don't know any of that data. I'd have to look at it. But my question still remains, given the impact that this bill is going to have on Oklahoma youth, so the folks you're asking to go green on this, what would you have them tell young people in their communities across the state who they've not talked to about this yet, and their parents? What would you say to them, those who are struggling, those who are contemplating suicide, those who now know that who they are isn't good enough for their state, so much so that we'll hold up $100 million to prevent them from receiving the kind of care that they want and need? What do you say to those youth facing that?
Just what I said on the last one at the very beginning, that there is other care available. There are other means of dealing with this besides these radical type of treatments, and the irreparable harm that's done if you do get into that and then you decide, oh, that's not what I needed. So just what I said, there's a lot of other treatments that are available to them, and if once they get to be of age, then and they still feel like that's the route they need to take, then that's available. But I've heard stories. I heard a story just a couple of weeks ago about a model who had always felt like she was a man. She waited until she was in her 30s, and she's very happy with her transition. But she cautioned, don't do this when you're young because you still don't know. So even people who have had successful transitions are saying don't do this to kids. And especially the ones that regret it are definitely saying do not do this to children. We're talking minors. And to me, that's just a line that I won't cross.
Representative Virgin, you're recognized for a question on the CCR.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative,
you've talked about a lot of people who you say have regretted the treatment that they've received later in life. By that logic, we could talk about people who have had plastic surgeries, elective plastic surgeries, who regret their decision later in life. Just because someone makes a decision that they regret, should we then legislate that in this building?
No, but the vast majority of those that you're talking about were at least fully of age and knew what they were at least expecting to get. When you're 11, 12, 13, even up to 17 years old, you still don't have the full mental capacity. That's been proven time and time again. We don't let people drive who are under the age of 16. We don't let people buy alcohol under the age of 21. We don't let them buy cigarettes. We don't let them do any of these things because some of those things would be harmful to them. This procedure is harmful to them. So, if they get to be 25, 30, whatever age, and decide to have these procedures, and it doesn't work out, or they're not happy with it, then, that was their decision, and they had the full mental capacity to make that decision.
Representative Virgin, you are recognized for one follow-up.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Representative, I'm encouraged to hear you talk about how youth have diminished decision-making capabilities and that they're not quite sure what they might be doing. I push back on whether they might regret these things in the future because this is made in consultation, these decisions are made in consultation with their parents and doctors. But would you believe that when it comes to our criminal justice system and youth who interact with the criminal justice system, we treat them like adults? We say that they can be tried as adults for mistakes that they make, even though they have this diminished decision-making capability. So can you help me resolve the contradiction there? That in some instances, we want to treat kids like they're adults, but in other instances, you want to treat kids like kids.
Well, in the instances that you're talking about, it's not uniformly that we charge a minor as an adult. Those are in very specific cases. It's not universal.
Representative Goodwin, you are recognized for a question on the CCR.
You had mentioned that you just said this, say gender assignment should that be sought, that you said this is harmful. So in making that declarative statement, and you also said that there are others that would make this choice or seek this gender assignment, and it works. So is it a little contradictory where you just said this is harmful? You just made a declarative statement like it's just a closed discussion?
I said that this is harmful to adolescents. It's harmful to children because anytime you introduce the hormone therapies, the puberty blockers, you are changing that person's normal developmental cycle. And especially if you're going in and doing surgeries. So there is a huge difference on that. So yes, I stand by my statement that for adolescents, this is absolutely harmful.
Representative Goodwin, you're recognized for a follow-up.
Thank you. And I think you're going to be closing the queue soon because this could be a very long discussion. I am curious, though, when you talk about mental capacity, you're talking about natural development, normal development, and do you not see the contradiction when first where someone is saying and you're agreeing that this is some kind of mental disorder, right? And then you're talking about, no, we would interrupt the normal progression or natural ability for this person to develop. Do you not see that contradiction? And also, I think you've got 18-year-olds that are running around with AR-15s, right, that are mutilating and shooting folks up. Do you see how there's all kinds of contradictions flying around right now in terms of mental capacity, what children or 18-year-olds should be able to do or not do? Do you see that there's contradictions all around on this issue?
No, I do not.
Just for clarification, I closed the queue about 20 minutes ago. There are still a few in the queue. We will get through the queue, and then we will divvy up the time for debate. Representative Gann, you are recognized for one question on the CCR.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker. Did you say one question?
You're recognized for one question.
All right. Thank you, sir. Thank you. So in light of the fact that we've had Florida shut down their program, we've had Texas, EO, we've had Arkansas, there's got to be something other than just, there's got to be something there that is bad that we need to address. And since we have the same problem here in Oklahoma, apparently, with the admission by OU and their willingness to put a halt on this program just for a segment of it, not all because it's statewide, would you agree that there needs to be an investigation, and then instead of tapping the brakes, we need to put the brakes on and stop and investigate this situation?
I would, like I said earlier, I would absolutely support an investigation. I would support any efforts on that front. But what I do know is what we have right here in front of us, and we can put an end to the vast majority of this being done, from my perspective anyway.
Representative Turner, you are recognized for a question on the CCR.
Thank you. So with this emergency clause on this piece of legislation, what's going to happen to the folks who are currently receiving care?
It is my understanding that OU has already made the announcement that they're not receiving new patients, and they are in the process of working however many patients. I have no idea how many. It might be one, it might be 1,000 through the program at this point. So I would think that over the next period of time, there are some stipulations within the overall ARPA funds that they won't be able to start drawing down money until certain things happen on down the road anyway. So I believe that there's a window of time where they can ramp this program down, and from what they've stated, they are already in the process of doing that.
Representative Turner, you're recognized for a follow-up.
So if there's a window of time, then what's the point of putting an emergency clause on this bill?
Well, the emergency was put on over in the Senate, and I believe that it was so that the funding mechanisms and we could start ensuring that this aspect of it does in fact start getting it shut down right now.
Representative Bennett, you're recognized for a question on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative, I've had a lot of reactions to a lot of other questions that have been asked. For example, my colleague from southeastern Oklahoma who talked about constituent sentiments made me think about how you and I share a district border, and how we have high school age constituents that go to school together, and made me start thinking about how some of those high school kids benefit from this program. And then I was thinking about
Representative Bennett.
Yeah, I'm getting there, but the context matters.
We're so close to debate.
We're going to be making a huge impact on a lot of people. So
that's why we've let it get to the question. Ask your question. You'll be recognized for debate when it's time to debate.
The previous question made me think about how when we banned abortion in this state, we left a lot of people out in the cold who needed procedures for their health and well-being. The confusion alone caused by the legislation halted a lot of procedures, probably put lives at risk, and may have actually cost lives. So now I'm thinking again about our shared constituents and how they are receiving care right now at clinics like that. And I worry, and I wonder if you share my concern, that the confusion and the fear from this legislation alone, regardless of what it says, will keep more kids who are more likely to take their own lives from getting the care that they need, not just today and not just when this bill passes, but in perpetuity, because healthcare professionals like teachers and nurses are leaving this state in droves as a result of what we do in this room. So I wonder if you share my concern.
I understand where you're coming from, but no, I do not necessarily share that concern, because the vast majority of the ones that are going through that clinic are not getting these specific services. So the other things that they provide today, they'll still be providing tomorrow, they'll provide next year and beyond. It's these very specific programs and procedures that we are putting a prohibition on.
Representative Fugate, you're recognized for a question on the CCR. That was such a long debate, I thought you were excited to get to debate. We're going to move on to the next question. Representative Fugate, you're recognized for a question on the...
Tom only got one question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So I've been thinking about the question we had earlier about lawsuits and whether OU would sue, and I think you would agree with me that if OU truly believed these treatments were harmful medical treatments and not just politically injurious, that they would cease providing those treatments immediately. They wouldn't need us to tell them to stop doing it. And so that begs the question, and raises a question, who does have standing? And it's the families who are affected by this. And so when they file their lawsuits, and they will, how long do you think this will delay the building of this medically necessary infrastructure for the state of Oklahoma?
I wouldn't think that it would affect the building of this, because as long as they're not providing those services, then they can continue with the building.
Representative Fugate, you're recognized for one follow-up on the CCR.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. But if the courts enjoin the moving forward of this particular legislation, they wouldn't be able to build. My second question is, there's an old saying that repeated anecdotes do not constitute data. And so I went back to the National Institutes of Health, the National Library of Medicine. I took a look. They have a 2021 study, 27 separate studies encompassing 8,000 transgendered folks, and 2/3 of those trans-feminine, 1/3 trans-masculine. And the number of participants in all of these studies that expressed any kind of regret was less than 1%. Does that surprise you by comparison to the anecdotes that you've been saying about how 50% of people have regret?
Well, I have no idea about any of that studies, but I will dispute the fact that that was an anecdote that I said, because that was direct from the doctors that we spoke to. And again, I said nearly 50%.
Representative Dollins, did you have a question? He waves. Representative Munson, you're recognized for a question on the CCR.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. From my understanding, the Senate bill that we're discussing, there's an emergency on this bill, right? So tell us what that means.
The emergency just means that it'll take effect upon signing.
Representative Munson, you're recognized for a follow-up.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So when writing the legislation, whoever put it together that you discussed with and agreed to carry the bill, surely you all heard from some physicians about what may happen with patients who are sooner care patients and the consequences from CMS, because they are mandated to care for everyone and provide holistic care for their patients, to take care of them. They need 30 to 60 days before they can end someone's care, a patient's care. Does that not worry you or bother you on what the state might face because of what we're doing with this legislation?
To the best of my knowledge, nobody at OU has contacted us with any concerns about what we're doing on this, and they are moving forward with ramping the program down.
Representative West Kevin now requesting unanimous consent that the CCR be adopted. Without objection, that would be the order. Fourth reading of the bill.
Senate Bill 3 by McCall of the House and Treat of the Senate, an act relating to University Hospitals Authority.
Representative West Kevin now moves final passage of the bill. Will there be debate? Members wishing to debate in favor of the bill, please hit your green button. Members speaking against, please hit your red button. Members, please get in the queue. I'm about to close it. Queue is now closed. Please suspend. Does anybody wish to yield? Representative Nichols wishes to yield to Representative Turner. Representative Fugate, please suspend. Hold on, we're working with the technology up here. Fugate yields to Turner. Ranson yields to Turner. Feckgetter yields to West Kevin. Please suspend. Members of the House come to order. Speaking against the measure for 2 minutes and 8 seconds, we have Representative Bennett, Representative Dollins, Representative Munson, Representative Rosecrans, Representative Blancett, Representative Virgin, Representative Gann, Representative West Rick, Representative Stearman, Representative Humphrey. Speaking against the measure for 8 minutes and 32 seconds is Representative Turner. Speaking for the measure, we have Pro Tem Hilbert, Representative Olson, Representative Randleman, Representative West Kevin. Members, please take your seats, take your conversations outside. Representative Turner, you are recognized for up to 8 minutes and 32 seconds debating against the measure.
Thank you. Well, every session, special or regular, we are always here doing some work. So, as always, my debate is for the people watching, for the future of healthcare here, for the children, and for the hearts and minds that are open on this floor. Open and ready for change. I don't think I could really describe to you in a better way than to show you, right, by my presence and being here. But I hope that one day you understand maybe a little bit of what it's like to be born into a body that isn't yours. That's what youth across Oklahoma are facing. And when we have numbers so few to get the health care we are banning, it also calls me to think about the youth who need that mental health care because they felt like they didn't have any place to turn. They couldn't talk to their friends, their families, their public educators, their guidance counselors about why they felt out of place. Because community leaders, right? Registered nurses, pharmacists, public educators, grandpas, uncles, aunts, they sit on this floor and they might pass this legislation, which creates a generation of isolation. This is from personal experience. I remember my first time after I was elected into this body, trying to get legislation passed, even just put into committee. One of the first questions I was asked about a bill that would add another gender marker was, what is the genitalia of non-binary people? If I'm looking, what am I looking for? That's from leadership. That came from the man presenting this bill. The next thing, I was told that my best ally in this building was going to be a woman who posted my photo online in an inflammatory manner. Opened my inbox and my voicemail up to so much go back to where you come from rhetoric. I come from Ardmore, Oklahoma. So, I think about the time I was trying to get a bill into committee and the chair just wrote "kill" across it and gave it back to me. I come into this place every day. My name is Maury Nivek Raja Salima Turner. My pronouns are they, them, and theirs. And I come not only to push progressive legislation that makes sure our children, our families feel seen and feel heard, right? But I come to be a beacon of light and hope, not just for the legislation, but merely being here, because people don't see themselves in this building. It makes it hard for people to come and talk to us because of the intimidation that happens here through policy in the place of bigotry. I hope that we think about the decisions we make and not just whether or not the bills pass, right, but the mental health repercussions it has on the families of Oklahoma. I couldn't be more grateful for the future of healthcare in Oklahoma showing up here. to let us know that no matter what an institution said, they care. They care enough to make sure our children, our families, our youth survive. They're here for us. I remember sitting on this body just a couple months ago, had a colleague look at me across the aisle and say, trans folks are made in the image of God, and then voted our rights away. I remember folks on the other side of the aisle stopping me in the parking lot after voting our rights away to say, you've got support on the other side of the aisle. We support you. This is the time to stand on that support, because stopping me in the hallways, stopping me in the parking lot, that doesn't help. That doesn't help the future of Oklahoma. That doesn't help our kids stay alive. But making sure we have resources in place for them to see the next day is important. I was thankful enough to have a mother that created a space for me to come out in the 2nd grade. And even still, the rhetoric that I heard from outside of my home created a gateway for me to not even think I was going to make it through high school, realistically, let alone middle school. And that came from business leaders, from pharmacists, from politicians who made laws about my everyday life and never thought about me. We are called, as politicians, to think about the future of Oklahoma. We are called to see the unseen and to hear the unheard, to have the political courage to stand and fight for people to survive. I implore you, right, because maybe he's not the author of this bill, but he's running it. And when we actually get a chance to talk to the people that we are writing legislation that could possibly end their lives, we owe it to them to talk to them. We owe it to them to look at them in the face and say, yeah, I didn't think about you. I just wanted to do what I wanted to do, what helps me sleep at night. Because I also want you to think about, when was the last time a trans person walking down the street did anything, right, to take away your rights, to stop you from living freely and walking about and having access to your rights in this country? Our youth and our adults want access to our rights, to be able to decide our own best medical practices between ourselves, our families, and our physicians. I find it so odd that the party of small government is the party that says, small government for me, but for you, with a microscope. I find it so odd that the party of small government says, you can have best medical practices as long as I get to choose what your best medical practices are. And I hope everybody that's watching, whether you are here in the gallery or you are online, understands that there will be a time that they are ready to put you up on the chopping block too. This is the time to take action, not when you feel like your rights are directly being harmed. This is the time, because this is a train that is ran by leadership in this building. And when we don't do everything we can to stop them, they will continue to move the field goal until whatever control looks like for them. So I'm hoping that you will take a step out and you will speak up and that you will vote against this, because the money is there. Oklahoma has the money to take care of our people, and we do not have to wage this war against them. And we don't have to use our children, our youth as pawns. Please vote no.
I'll remind members that there will be no outbursts, chanting, cheering of any sort during debate, and then also guests in the gallery. We're glad you're here, but there are rules to be followed. We ask, as you're a guest here, that you follow the rules. If you can't do that, I'm going to have to ask the sergeants to remove the offending parties. Please, as we conduct the people's business, follow the rules. No outbursts. Thank you very much. Representative Stearman, you're recognized for up to 2 minutes and 8 seconds debating against the bill.
Thank you. I'm sure we all agree that this hospital has provided phenomenal care for families across the state. I spent several days there with my newborn son, and they provided incredible care for my child. I very much appreciated the care that he received. I am trying today to understand why this known controversial bill project was combined with all these other projects in this bill and not pulled out and assigned its own number. I think on its own merit, this bill would fail. No sane person could rationalize a vote in support of mutilating children. OU Health is currently advertising the sex change procedures on children on its website. It is shameful to use these additional projects to push through an abominable one. And a verbal commitment to end the Roy G. Biv program from an entity that stands to gain millions of dollars is not enough assurance to proceed. At the very least, we need evidence that these procedures are no longer occurring before awarding so much money. If we can add limitations to spending, then we can add the requirement to end the program and not reinstate it before agreeing to hand millions of taxpayer dollars over to them. We are being lied to, and we must not support this bill. I'll yield the remainder of my time to Representative Gann. Thank you.
Representative Gann will now have 2 minutes and 43 seconds when it is his turn to debate. Representative West Rick, you are recognized for up to 2 minutes and 8 seconds debating against the measure.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate it. Mr. Speaker, there's nothing more that I would love nothing more than to stop this mutilization of the kids in Oklahoma and this Roy G. Bill program. Nothing more would I like to shut it down. But, Mr. Speaker, this bill that we're talking about, we forgot about this bill. This bill is the bill. It's not what we think it says. It's not what we want it to say. It is not. It is what it is. And, Mr. Speaker, this bill will not stop these procedures from going on in Oklahoma. The point of this bill is to stop the Roy G. Bill program. But there's been too many ifs. When questions were asked, I don't know, I don't think so, I'm not sure. This bill will not do what you want it to do. It will not, Mr. Speaker, stop this child abuse that we have going on in Oklahoma. The only way to stop this, if we really want to end this procedure, is to have a statewide ban against this procedures that's going on. We're not here today to talk about health care. We are here today to talk about a procedure, a Roy G. Bill program that is, and everybody knows it, it is child abuse. And to think that we are going to stop it by this bill is not very smart. I would love to stop it, but this bill will not do that. All the reason that this language was put into this bill so that money would go ahead and be given to OU, and the program is secondary. It's to give people a easy way out to vote yes on this, and to think that we're going to stop this, and we're not. I urge everybody in this building to vote no. Thank you.
Representative Dollins, you're recognized for up to 2 minutes and 8 seconds debating against the measure.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to start off
by saying the level of disrespect and impugnment of character directed toward OU medical health professionals is astounding and an embarrassment, and I would like to apologize to all of you on behalf of the State Senate and the House of Representatives. OU Health, it makes Oklahoma a better state. I'll remind you that the original call to this special session was to allocate funding from the Biden administration to make Oklahoma a better place to live. And in the last moments, just a few days ago, a poison pill, this issue that we're talking about right now, was put into an otherwise very helpful bill. This, right now, unfortunately, is cheap political tricks 5 weeks before the midterms. And if you don't believe me, just a few months ago, the representative from District 19 stood right over there and said, would you believe I'm going to win my election on this very issue, very similar issue on which we're speaking to today. Except your cheap political tricks have collateral, and that's one of the most susceptible and vulnerable communities in our population. And it's very sad commentary that many people in this chamber can't see beyond that. So no matter how strong your opinion may be, at the end of the day, it's not your choice to make. There's not very many medical professionals here on the floor, and we heard from the author or the person presenting the bill that they haven't even consulted with the parents of youth trans people that are going through this process. It's very short-sighted. It's political red meat. You got your way with Roe, and now you need something else. The dog finally caught the car. It doesn't know what to do, so you throw out more red meat. Something socially divisive to stir up your base and get them to go out to the polls. But this ain't the way you do it, because you're playing with people's lives, and at the end of the day, if this passes, that's going to be on your hands. Vote no.
Representative Rosecrans, you're recognized for up to 2 minutes and 8 seconds debating against the measure.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In regards to Senate Bill 3, many of my constituents, especially those in the medical field, many of whom are here, they represent the entire political spectrum. They've reached out to me to urge us to not even legislate these types of things, and they urged me to continue to educate folks on why, and also to request that I fight against this type of legislation, which is exactly what I'm doing. I had an example of an email, but with 1 minute and 40 seconds left, I'm not going to get there, but just realize it talks about that this clinic saves lives. And I want to reiterate that nothing is done without parental consent and involvement. So why is it we're still here debating this? Well, Representative from Oklahoma City said it well. It's fear in politics, y'all. Fear of the unknown, fear of change, fear of the world changing, fear of different. And these fears are being exploited in this body. I mean, why else would we bring this up right now, 50 days away, or I guess less than 50 days away from a huge general election? That's my question. Also, have any of y'all who are trying to legislate this talked to any parents of a transgender person? First off, I strongly urge you to do so. And second, let's debunk some of this while I have the mic. A parent does not and cannot transition their child. They guide them and they love them on this journey. Without experts in the field to help, this would be even more dangerous. A parent may not even actually agree with any kind of physical gender-affirming care, but that's not anybody's business. It's between the parent, the doctors, and the legislature. So, as though who I thought favored small government continue to sneak into our homes and our bedrooms, as they continue to target folks, look within yourselves, realize love is love. Dig up that unconditional love that I know is in your hearts. Realize we're all freaking human, and stop authoring and even supporting these types of harmful policies. Vote no.
Representative Blansett, you are recognized for up to 2 minutes and 8 seconds debating against the measure.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, today I rise to debate against this bill. It finds me very heartsick, frankly, after all of the hard work that I've put in over the summer on all of these ARPA projects. I felt like we did really good work We came together in a bipartisan way. We had really rich conversations about how we can make our state better. And as a result of that bipartisan process and that work, we came out with very exceptional decisions to invest strategically, one of which is represented in this bill in terms of cancer care and mental health. And I was super proud to be part of that. However, this political stunt, and make no mistake, it is a stunt, because if it wasn't a stunt, we would have run this question on its own. But we knew we didn't have the vote, and so we attached it and held strategic investment in mental care and cancer care hostage for political gain. Period. End of story. You heard today, we don't have the data. We don't have the numbers. We don't know to what degree this is a problem. I'm a pragmatic person. I work on facts. I work across the aisle on facts, on policy that is not party-centric. I encourage you to look into your heart and see if you can make the same choice by voting no on this question today. I yield the rest of my time to Representative Munson.
Representative Munson will now have 2 minutes and 20 seconds when it is her turn to debate. Members, the chair will remind you to please debate to the chair, not to anybody else. Representative Humphrey, you are recognized for up to 2 minutes and 8 seconds. Debating to the speaker, to the chair, you're recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I got accused just a little bit ago of turning this into a political, and I want to tell you that I don't have an election, so that is false. That is not true. I want to tell you this. It is a political issue, though, because I'm here for we the people. We the people. Have we forgotten that? Because I came up here to represent District 19. I listened to District 19, and this is what I'm doing, standing up debating this, because District 19 agrees with me that this is a mental health issue, and you don't address a mental health issue by mutilation. You address mental health issues through mental health care. And that's what I'm standing to debate, and this is what I'm going to tell you. When I was 7 or 8 years old, I used to think I was Superman. I know y'all might have a hard time believing that, but I thank God that my mom and dad didn't take me out and put me on the railroad tracks to see if I could stop a speeding locomotive. I thank God that they didn't shoot a bullet at me to see if I could stop a speeding bullet. You know, if I thought I was a pirate, according to the logic of many in this room, you would cut off your leg and put a peg leg on at 7 years old. The insanity that I have to make those kind of statements is insane. But that's the type of logic that we're speaking to here. It is insane. I will represent we the people. We the people of District 19 say that what we ought to be debating here is a law to make it illegal to mutilate children. You can't vote till you're 18. You can't get a tattoo till you're 18. You can't drink till you're 21. So let's not mutilate children until they have an opportunity to be part of the discussion as a mature adult. Thank you. Vote no on this bill.
Representative Gann, you are recognized for up to 2 minutes and 43 seconds debating against the measure.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm like the other representative that mentioned that she likes to deal in facts in life, and so do I. So when we've been studying this issue for the past 3 or 4 years, we've had bills that we've tried to get through this House, and also we've had bills through the Senate that were unsuccessful. So what really concerns me about this is OU's participation in this industry and this practice. And so I went looking, and I found the Florida Medicaid study by the Generally Accepted Professional Medicaid Standards, Medical Standards, Determination on the Treatment of Gender Dysphoria. This was requested by the state of Florida, and here's the abstract. And I believe OU knows this. They're medical professionals. They deal in information all the time. I believe they're fully aware that the medical literature provides insufficient evidence that sex reassignment through medical intervention is a safe and effective treatment for gender disorder. The studies presenting the benefits, mental health, including those claiming services prevent suicide, are very low in quality. Unreliable methods such as surveys are used, and retrospective analysis in both are cross-sectional and highly biased. I believe that they know this. I think we need to investigate them. I think they are fully willing participants to know the lack of information. But the medical ethics surrounding this bothers me as well, because the study found that the bioethical challenges related to sex reassignment treatment, emphasizing a lack of informed consent when administering these services. He asserts that gender disorder is largely a self-diagnosis practitioners cannot verify with empirical tests. Let's have the facts. There are none. This is all a lie. This person raised the question as how do experienced and ethical physicians so mislead others or be so misled themselves. We need an investigation on this. We need to find the facts. And we need to end this practice statewide and end it now. I would urge you to vote no.
Representative Randleman, you're recognized for up to 6 minutes debating in favor of the measure.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm a licensed psychologist and also a state representative. It is my duty to tell you that my opinion in this situation represents a state representative and not a member of the Oklahoma Psychological Association or the American Psychological Association. I do want to say this. It is my opinion. I do not support the gender procedures of any kind or gender reassignments. And I give the rest of my time to Mr. West, Representative West.
Representative West has a maximum time of 10 minutes. Representative Bennett, you are recognized for up to 2 minutes and 8 seconds debating against the measure.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hold a lot of what I would consider, many of the people in this room would consider unpopular opinions. But one of the most controversial opinions I hold is that term limits are bad. In fact, my wedding ring, says no term limits on the inside. It's a surprise for my wife, which I really appreciate. Also says my wedding date on there, which is helpful. But the reason is that my grandmother, who was a county commissioner for 18 years, she abhorred term limits. And when she would make the case that term limits were bad, she would use this example. In no other industry in the world do we value a brevity of service and inexperience. And for example, if I needed a major medical procedure, I would not go to someone who's been told you can only do that for 12 years and then you have to move on to something else. And I think today, and this legislature is a great example of a group of folks who, all due respect everybody, we haven't been good at our jobs. Since I've been in the legislature, I've had to come back here multiple times to fix problems that we've caused. We can't do our own jobs that well, and part of that is because term limits have made us disinterested in doing long-term, good-for-the-state projects and more interested in short-term, sensational legislation that does little other than hurt people. I would say that we are the last people to dictate to anybody else how they do their job, and that's exactly what we're doing. Medical decisions should be left up to a person in consultation with their family and their medical professionals, not their legislators. And I think that in almost every other case, all of my colleagues would agree with that, Mr. Speaker. But not this. I find that interesting. And I think the entire state is going to find it incredibly damaging when this is passed because of the unintended consequences that are very real, no matter what you believe. Facts don't care what we believe. Vote no.
Representative Olson, you are recognized for up to 6 minutes debating in favor of the measure.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, this question, it's not about politics. It's not about whether I get elected in November. I have no race. It's about what is best for children. It is about, do we really care about children? And so we hear, well, there's parents, there's doctors. Usually, generally, almost always, we can, do, and should leave alone the relationship between parents and children. Usually, generally, most of the time, we should leave alone the relationship between doctors and parents and children. But there are exceptions. That's why we do have a federal and a state government. There are limits to parental authority. There are no doubt a variety of parental styles and how children are trained and brought up, and that's fine. But the state says you can't abuse children. Child abuse is wrong. If they catch you doing that and convict you, you go to jail, as it should be. And these procedures, they are child abuse. We talk about doctors' authority. I probably wouldn't be alive today were it not for the help of good doctors. Appreciate the good doctors that can be found almost everywhere. Appreciate the good doctors at OU. I appreciate the good doctors at OU Children's Health. I realize this is, I hope, just a small part of their program that's the controversial point here. But there are limits to even what a doctor should do. Many of us will recognize the name Dr. Joseph Mengele. He was a doctor, very qualified, very intelligent. He did some things that were wrong. Teenagers making this decision, many medical experts will tell us that their brains are not fully developed and they would not understand the ramifications of decisions like this. Let me read a little bit from the American College of Pediatricians. While transgender activist clinicians claim medical intervention is life-saving, this is a lie. There is not a single long-term study to demonstrate the safety and efficacy of puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and surgeries for transgender-believing youth. This means that youth transition is experimental, and therefore parents cannot provide informed consent, nor can minors assent to these interventions. Moreover, the best long-term evidence we have among adults shows that medical intervention fails to reduce suicide. Suicide, and I think it's been referenced once before. Study out of Sweden, very carefully done. The Swedish are very good at getting their data together. And if anything, their bias would be in favor of this. Their conclusion was that those that went through with transgender hormones and surgeries had a higher risk of suicide, a risk 19 times higher. Many medical organizations around the world, including the Australian College of Physicians, the Royal College of General Practitioners in the United Kingdom, and the Swedish National Council for Medical Ethics, have characterized these interventions in children as experimental and dangerous. World-renowned Swedish psychiatrist Dr. Christopher Gillberg said that pediatric transition is, to quote, possibly one of the greatest scandals in medical history, and called for an immediate moratorium on the use of puberty blocker drugs because of their unknown long-term effects. What can happen? block normal breast development in a female, sexual dysfunction, infertility, interrupt brain development in a male, stunt penile and testicular growth, sexual dysfunction, disrupt brain and bone development. The hormones. What does it do to males who take estrogen? Increased risk of heart attacks, about 3 times higher. Increased risk of strokes, gallstones, breast cancer. Females on testosterone, cardiovascular deaths, severe liver dysfunction, hypertension, breast cancer, uterine and ovarian cancer. These things are harmful. The mutilations, I can only think of atrocities in the past to compare this to, and it is an atrocity, these surgical mutilations. It's time we stopped. I urge you to vote yes on this and make a big step towards stopping this completely. Thank you.
Representative. Please remove the person from the gallery. Guests in the gallery, I think I've been very lenient on the rules. Please, no outbursts. If it happens again, I'm going to have to ask everybody to exit the gallery. I don't want to do that. I want you to be here. I want you to be part of this conversation. But we do have rules that we must abide by to get the work of this body done. Thank you. Representative Munson, you're recognized for up to 2 minutes and 8 seconds debating against the measure. Correct, sorry, 2 minutes and 20 seconds.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So we came from our districts in the middle of fall to work on a once-in-a-generation investment for all of our communities. That's why we're here. But instead, for the last 2 hours, we've decided to continue to tell our state that we don't trust our parents, we don't trust physicians, and we definitely do not trust Oklahomans to make their own personal and private health care decisions. And instead, we're playing politics with people's lives. I was on the ARPA committee as well with my colleague from Tulsa. Very grateful that I had the opportunity to do the work throughout the summer and during regular session. And it's been said over and over again that this was talked about, and I can guarantee you it was not. As someone who went to every meeting except for maybe one private meeting that I missed, it never came up. I, as a committee member, never and would never agree to a policy like this. In a few of the debates, child abuse has been brought up. And it's talked about when you all have folks contact us, Mr. Speaker. But I'll tell you, child abuse is getting swatted in on your back with chopsticks. Your hair being pulled as a little girl. Being locked out of your house for almost 8 months. That's child abuse. That's what I've experienced. Child abuse is not caring for your children and taking them to a medical doctor to give them the best health care that they deserve. I know. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm asking you to join me in voting no so that we can tell Oklahomans that we trust them.
Pro Tem Hilbert, you are recognized for up to 6 minutes debating in favor of the measure.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There are 10 sections in Senate Bill 3XX, and almost the entirety of the discussion this afternoon has been on one of those 10 sections. So I do want to just take a moment to talk about the other sections of the bill. One regarding OU Stevenson, $20 million. We have a world-renowned facility right next to the Capitol down the road in Stevenson Cancer Center, the highest designation possible for any cancer treatment center in the world. And it makes it where our citizens in Oklahoma don't have to fly to California or Houston to get care. They can receive tomorrow's care today through clinical trials at OU Stevenson. And I'm very excited about this opportunity, this $20 million that's going to go towards the University of Oklahoma in partnership with an existing provider in Tulsa to make sure that my constituents and others in Northeast Oklahoma have that same access to care that those in Central Oklahoma have at Stevenson Cancer and expand that capacity. It's a very good thing. Electronic health records. I actually just this week was at OU Children's Hospital for an appointment with my daughter, and we needed to send some x-rays, some scans over from St. Francis, but the electronic health record system, OU Health System, is one of the only hospital systems, major hospital systems in the entire country that's not on the Epic record system. So what we had to do is take a picture of my daughter's scan and email it to our surgeon, which is not good. This electronic health record system, this $44 million is going to go in conjunction with over $200 million. OU's already committed to the electronic health records process, which is going to provide better care for our constituents and for the state of Oklahoma. Is very much needed. And then, of course, $39.4 million. We've talked about the second half of Section 1, Mr. Speaker, but not really much conversation about the first half, which is $39.4 million towards a state-of-the-art new behavioral health center for children. And if there's anything that we know after the last 2 years, we have to make investments in mental health in general, but also for our children. And this has definitely been in the news recently. I'll read a quote from District Attorney Kunzweiler, who was in the news this week, and he stated, and I'm going to read this quote, Mr. Speaker. In August of 2015, Labor Commissioner Mark Costello was stabbed to death by his mentally ill son at a Brahms restaurant. That was the state's very first public warning that our laws governing the mentally ill and the funding necessary to treat them, while also protecting the public, was in peril. It has been crickets since the death of Labor Commissioner Costello. Crickets, said Kunzweiler. Well, today, the legislature, in House Bill 1013, presented by our health chair from Duncan earlier, was a $125 million investment to rebuild Griffin Memorial Hospital, to build Tulsa Center for Behavioral Health, plus $39.4 million today going towards a children's behavioral health unit. That's $164.4 million, Mr. Speaker, today that this legislature is putting towards mental health facilities that are truly going to have generational impact, and that's important. But, of course, we've got to talk about the other section of the bill, as has been discussed today. And I know it's being framed as controversial, but it really isn't controversial. We're talking about children not giving girls testosterone, young boys estrogen, until they're of age and of the age of 18. Earlier it was asked that nobody supporting this bill has talked to transgender parents, and that's not true. I personally have talked to a parent whose daughter went through this process and regretted it, and is trying to transition back and will never be the same. And speaking of that, Fox 25 interviewed the director of this clinic and asked, how many of these have said, you know what, I made a big mistake and I wish I'd never done this? 5. I would say it's even less than 5. I would say it's actually 2 that regret the choices. But that's 2 admitted by the director of the clinic that have went through this process and regret it. And we talk a lot about parental choice, and yes, parental choice is important, but also protecting children is important. I could not give parental consent for an elective procedure to chop my daughter's pinky toe off, but yet I could give parental consent to allow the removal of her breasts before she's 18. What makes this okay? A vote on this bill, a yes vote on this bill shuts down this clinic. A yes vote does. A no vote allows it to continue. That's just the facts. A yes vote shuts it down, a no vote doesn't. Members, I encourage you to vote yes on this measure, and I yield the rest of my time to the chair.
Leader Virgin, you're recognized for up to 2 minutes and 8 seconds debating against the measure.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We talked a lot about parental consent and elective procedures and regret. People have elective procedures that they regret. It happens all the time. Parents can consent to their young daughters having breast augmentation. Why are we picking and choosing which elective procedures we're allowing? Well, Mr. Speaker, I've been in this building for 12 years. This is the last bill that I'll ever get to vote on, the last bill I'll ever get to debate on. You don't have to clap, but I know you're happy. And what I've seen in these 12 years is a constant theme, which is control over people's bodies. Control over people's bodies from people in this building who have no idea what folks are going through. Whether it's reproductive choice or gender-affirming care, what we see in this building time and time again is legislators inserting themselves into the most intimate and personal decisions that a person and a family can make. What gives you the right to insert yourself into these conversations? Nothing gives you the right. You don't have control over these people's bodies as badly as you want it. As badly as you want it, Mr. Speaker, you can't have that control because people have bodily autonomy and we will fight for it every day. Please vote no.
Representative West Kevin, you're recognized for up to 10 minutes speaking in favor of the measure.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We have spent the last 2 hours talking about one portion of this bill, and that portion says no monies shall be budgeted or expended by the authority for the benefit of the facility owned of any facility owned by the University Hospital Authority or University Hospital Trust performing gender reassignment medical treatment as defined in this section on children under the age of 18. Mr. Speaker, I think it's been well documented that we probably pretty universally agree with most of the monies that we're going to be expending. And what we have been arguing about is should this facility be able to mutilate children? And I have a hard time with that, Mr. Speaker. I do want to break down what this language means. There are 3 main points that this language means. Number 1, prohibiting the use of any money at any OU medical facility being used for any gender reassignment treatment, including puberty blockers, hormone therapy, and surgeries on children. Number 2, and I think this one is very important, all of the appropriated money in this bill will go into accounts with the state treasurer that OU Medical can draw down on as they have expenditures. Well, what does that mean? Well, Mr. Speaker, what that means is none of this money will be available immediately to OU Medical. Number 3, with the prohibitive language as a condition of payments, if at any time OU Medical violates these conditions, they no longer receive funds. Does this go as far as many of us would like it to go? No, it doesn't. But, Mr. Speaker, we are in a limited call right now, and we are working within that call. I know that some people on this floor could vote either way on this bill. and you probably even walked onto this floor not knowing for sure which way you were going to vote. Well, here's a couple of reasons for you to vote yes. What do we get if we pass this legislation? We end the practice of gender reassignment on children at OU medical facilities now. The other thing that we get is that we will fund critical needs within the OU medical system. What do we get if we don't pass this bill? Well, we will allow the practice of gender reassignment to continue unfettered on children, and we will not fund the critical needs within the OU medical system. I think those are a couple very big points. Regardless of which way we decide to go, there is no assurance that we can pass a statewide ban in the future. We've had legislation introduced in the past year that's been referenced, and none of those efforts have been able to get across the finish line. But we can absolutely pass this today and end this practice at OU medical facilities today. OU medical facilities, specifically OU Children's, claim to be the only provider of such procedures in the state. So on the policy side alone of this legislation, the question before you is how many children are you willing to sacrifice in the next several months for something that you hope will happen in the future that we have no assurance for? I've mentioned it. It's also been mentioned by another member that studies have shown that patients who have received these treatments are 19 times more likely to commit suicide than those who do not receive these treatments. This, along with the personal testimonies for many who have attempted to reverse these typically irreversible procedures and those who have later expressed regret, clearly suggests these are not best practice procedures. Puberty blockers, hormone therapies, despite the claims, cause irreparable harm and complications for children. These drugs include the same drugs used in chemical castrations. At best, these cause interruptions to normal development, and at worst, they cause permanent irreversible damage. And let's not forget the surgeries, which clearly cause irreversible damage. It was brought up that, a parent can opt in for breast augmentation, but we're saying they can't do this. Well, even the breast augmentation, Mr. Speaker, is reversible. And I would be remiss if I didn't point this out. Some of the most progressive countries in the world have put severe restrictions on minors receiving these kind of surgeries and procedures, including the UK and Sweden. When we talk to people at risk of suicide, an often repeated truism is, don't choose a permanent solution for a temporary problem. And what we've seen within these type of programs is we have adults who should be trusted with the care of our children. These vulnerable children, they're turned around and give them this very permanent line of treatment, so-called. This, before most laws even allow these individuals to get a tattoo or rent a car. I do want to be very clear, Mr. Speaker. OU Children's and OU Medical provides world-class medical and mental health care for the children and citizens of this state. And this bill will not affect those services, will not impair them, will not impair a single child from receiving this critical care. What it does prevent is the not so long ago unthinkable practice of child mutilation. It's been said that this bill is anti-transgender. I argue, Mr. Speaker, this bill is pro-children. This bill will allow these children an opportunity to grow and realize who they are before making a before receiving a life-altering procedure. In closing, Mr. Speaker, what we have before us is an opportunity to end the practice of child mutilation at OU Children's Hospital facilities today. I urge you, Mr. Speaker, to vote yes and protect our children.
The question for the House is, shall the bill pass? The clerk back to the machine. Sergeant Knight's roll call in the halls. Roll call is now in progress. Nichols votes nay. Kennedy votes aye. Wallace votes aye. Members, House rules state that if you are in the chamber, you are required to vote. If you are in the chamber, you are required to vote. Declare the vote.
"67 aye, 24 nay."
Having received a majority vote of those elected to and constant in the House, I declare the bill to have passed. There is an emergency. The clerk will activate the machine for a vote on the emergency. Hassenbeck votes aye. Kennedy votes aye. Nichols votes nay. Declare the vote.
68 aye, 23 nay.
Having received a two-thirds vote of those elected to and constant in the House, I declare the emergency to have passed. Mr. Floor Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We are now ready for announcements and introductions.
Members, if you have an announcement or introduction, please get in the queue. Representative Turner, you are recognized for an announcement or introduction. Members, we're almost there. Please give us your attention for announcement and introductions, and then you can go home and make as much noise as you'd like. Representative Turner, you're recognized for announcement or introduction.
Thank you, thank you. I think I just like yet again want to say thank you. I know everyone's leaving the gallery. It's been a long day, but thank you. I think specifically to the students from OU Health. I think it takes a lot to actively be in school and also take time away when folks are threatening your ability to be able to stay and provide care in the state. So I can't say thank you enough for all the advocates and students who came out today for the future of Oklahoma. So, yeah.
Seeing no further announcements or introduction, Mr. Floor Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for an announcement.
Representative Eccles, you're recognized for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think it's only fitting. We've talked about a lot of members that aren't going to be coming back for their last time, but I want to point out for our membership, we had running the floor today our old/new Deputy Majority Floor Leader Dustin Roberts. I wish you guys would give him a hand for me.
Representative Blanchett, if you'd like to be recognized, please get in the queue. Representative Roberts, thank you for your many, many years of service to our state. We appreciate you. You'll be missed occasionally. Representative Blanchett, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'd like the record to reflect that had I been able to be in the chamber this morning, I would have voted an emphatic no against House Bill 1017XX. Thank you.
Journals will reflect. Mr. Floor Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, so remember, we have passed the sine die resolution for the 14th. We do not have to come back. If we do not come back, we will sine die this extraordinary special session. But in case we do have to take up any other business, we will be adjourning to a call of the chair. So, Mr. Speaker, at this time, I move that when the clerk's desk is clear, we adjourn to a call of the chair.
Without objection, that'll be the order. We're adjourned to the call of the chair.